Hi, my name is Jacques Leijssenaar. I'm the Vice President Cargo EMEA for United Airlines.
United Airlines, one of the major players on the global market, not just in terms of passenger capacity, but also cargo capacity. And we know what happened during the pandemic. Most of the passenger planes were grounded, but some of them were actually flying with only the boxes in the hold, flying for Amazon and all the e-commerce providers. Do we see a shift and a major transformation that is coming out because of this boom in e-commerce, and how will it transpire onto the market?
Yeah. Well, what we learned from the pandemic indeed is that capacity was still needed, despite the fact that there is freighter operations. We as United, we only offer belly capacity. The shortage in that time was so huge that customers were willing to pay for the additional price. And normally a belly carrier combines the passenger revenues with the cargo revenues. Yeah? And in this case, or in the pandemic, it was cargo flights only that generated the revenues. But we've seen, and I think also what happened internally, that cargo revenues became a substantial part of flight profitability. Network contribution is now a mix of passenger contribution and cargo contribution. Where in, let's say, normal times, pre-COVID, the cargo part was fractional of the total network contribution. That has changed. It's not easy to predict how that will look in the end or in the future, but it created a more healthier playing field at the moment. Shippers are not always happy with that because they are confronted with higher costs than previously. It's not only because of higher freight rates, air freight rates, but also of the congestion in sea freight, where many shipments has to be delivered earlier than anticipated.
And you mentioned, and rightly so, that actually air cargo is just part of the whole process. It's a piece of the puzzle. But then the extra mile usually goes by road, on the ground, and so on. In that respect, digitalization is the one, and involvement in more and more technology to create a single and shared ecosystem in order for the client, the end client, who is sending the cargo in this example, or even the passenger in a door-to-door experience, to experience the whole process simultaneously and seamlessly. So is that the major transformation that is ongoing, or are we not there yet?
Well, the main difference between cargo and passenger is, there's two main differences. One is cargo, you can apply the pipelining principle. That means you can find routings that are not preferred by passengers because of the multiple stops you would or you might have.
Yeah.
In cargo, you agree on a transit time with a customer. As long as you meet that transit time, multiple solutions can be found, either by trucking. So to give you an example, if you want to fly from Amsterdam, in my case, to Chicago, you could go Amsterdam, Chicago directly. You could take a stop in Europe, you could truck it to Frankfurt, from Frankfurt go directly into Chicago, or from Amsterdam you could ship it to Washington and truck it, or fly it from Washington into Chicago. Not always preferred by passengers. There are digital solutions where, for example, you can find optimal routing. It's interesting to see if the market is willing to pay that premium in order to become more environment friendly, with direct flights, using partners, trucking solutions with perhaps in the future electrical trucks, etc., etc.
So, to recap it all, are we ready to delegate more power, more solutions to the artificial intelligence, to machine learning processes? Or is it still the human factor that is in the center of it all? And what do you think personally the future holds for this part of the industry?
I think there is definitely a part of business that can be fully digitalized and electronically handled, but there's a big chunk, and I think the majority of the business, where personal interaction is crucial. Okay. I always compare it, if you fly yourself, you book a ticket for yourself online, you get your ticket electronically. But if you book a ticket for your child that is unaccompanied, you prefer to speak to somebody.
Yeah.
Sometimes the same with cargo. Our forwarders, they deal with big multinationals. They have a big responsibility. They want to be 100% sure that their goods are delivered as promised. Yeah? The same with, like a system can never, or can hardly, create such smooth boundaries that you always can say yes. That's in our industry, that personally I believe in. Customers who deal with us and we find a solution, they come back. Yeah? And a system can be many times quite rigid. Flight is full, you have to go to another one. Where if you have your personal knowledge about there, we know now some customer always comes with a little bit less cargo, I can try to get that done for you. So for me, in what I said again, a part of the business can absolutely be transferred, but there is a big chunk, I think the majority of the business will always be handled with human interaction.
What do you think were the lessons learned, or the single most important lesson learned from the chaotic summer this year and the recovery of the pandemic?
I think that the market adapted very quickly to the new situation. But that's inherent to cargo in itself. If there either is a natural disaster or in this case a pandemic where you have no passengers, but the market will find its solution. And the ones who adapt quickly to that is the one who is also have in future the experience for that. So that's definitely what we learned. I mean, in a previous life, I worked for a company with also with freighters. Yeah, and that was in the time of the ash cloud. I don't know if you remember that in Iceland. Could also not fly, but the industry wanted uplift because pharmaceuticals, urgent shipments needs to be delivered. Contractual agreements, needs to be done. And the sooner you can adapt and transform your fleet, for example, into full cargo charters, that's what we learned. If you adapt there very quickly, you can definitely stay in business there.
It's good that you mentioned that, because my last question was going to be, you were on both sides of the Atlantic. Yeah. What are the differences that you see in between how the processes are handled and actually the mentality behind everything, between the US and North America and how the Europeans are doing it, and which is the best way? How can we learn from each other, from best practices?
Well, what I love from the Americans is when they embrace an idea, it's like an unstoppable machine. You see that in sports, at certain trials, people come up you never heard of, and they win 3 months later an Olympic medal.
It's like the avalanche effect.
It is, there is a lot of rules and regulations which are sometimes not always in favor of flexibility, but they are there for a reason. If I compare that with Europeans, or in my case Dutch we say we are fishermen. If the business is not there, we go there. There's not a real plan. It's more pragmatic approach instead of a planned approach. I think the combination of that two is in our case is really making the difference.
That will create the win-win situation.
Absolutely. Okay, perhaps we take more risk as European, and that helps. Risk always in the boundaries of what is legally allowed. Yeah. But we do take that. We are not afraid of overbooking a flight, anticipating on a customer, and we tell him, I'm sorry, you know, I will make sure the next flight you will get there. So it's more pragmatic versus a more processed approach.
Yeah. So you see the future as mostly data-driven.
As what?
You see the future mostly as data-driven, driven by data and by analysis.
It's important.
Yeah.
But you should not wait for the data. Yeah? I mean, of course, we have intelligent revenue management systems, we have algorithms that can help, but common knowledge and common sense are quite crucial in a freight market. That's very much important. Of course, we use the data, but we also still want that our people think.